Welcome to the second budget hearing for City Council to consider our budget for 2013. We have three resolutions to consider today, and 3912, that has to do with levying an ad valorem tax for the City of Pensacola and the Downtown Improvement Board, year beginning October 1st. The second one would be adopting a final budget for the City of Pensacola for the year beginning again October 2012, and a final budget for the Downtown Improvement Board for the same year. So those three resolutions. If any person decides to appeal any decision with respect to any matter considered at such a meeting, you need a record of these proceedings. This is a required reading in for the record here, so just bear with me. The first substantive issue discussed must be the percentage increased over the rollback rate necessary to fund the budget, if any, and the specific purposes for which ad valorem tax revenues are being increased. The rollback rate is the millage rate which will be sufficient to provide the same ad valorem tax revenue as was levied during the prior year. The proposed final millage rate of 4.2895 mills for the city and 2.0000 mills for the Downtown Improvement District constitutes a 1.565% decrease of property taxes below the aggregate rollback rate, which is 4.4058 mills. The rollback rate is the millage rate which, exclusive of new construction, additions to structures, deletions, increases in the value of improvements that have undergone a substantial rehabilitation, which increases the assessed value of such improvements by at least 100%. And property added due to geographical boundary changes will provide the same ad valorem tax revenue as was levied during the prior year. At the meeting, the mayor's staff will explain the reasons for the proposed decrease over the rollback rate.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I have also something to read into the record in answer to that question. The reason for the proposed decrease over the rollback rate is primarily due to the declining property values, along with the passage of Amendment 1 that allowed for portability, as well as the property tax reform state legislation requiring all cities and counties to calculate a maximum millage levy which adjusts the rollback rate for growth in per capita Florida personal income. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 is resolution number 39-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution finally levying an ad valorem property tax for the City of Pensacola, including the Downtown Improvement District for 2012, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion from the council. And the public has Ms. Myers.
Yes, I have a printout I'd like to make sure the council members have.
Sure.
I think everybody has one but you. Megan,
I have one over here.
you have one? Anybody else over here?
I've got it, thank you.
How about you, Dr. Lewis?
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about this during the second resolution.
Oh, I thought we were on the budget.
No, we're on the ad valorem, adopting the ad
I'm
valorem
sorry.
rate,
Okay.
yes. So the public has a right to speak on any of these issues. Anybody in the public wish to speak? Please vote.
So you speak.
And that passes unanimously. Mr. Townsend's absent for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Item number 2 is a resolution number 40-12, a resolution to be entitled, a resolution adopting a final budget for the City of Pensacola for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2012, making final appropriations for the payment of the expenses of the city, government, and all departments thereof, and for the payment on account of the bonded indebtedness of the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2012, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Boy, that was close.
Gets us started.
Okay. Ms. Myers.
I have a suggestion. I have given you a memo regarding a change in some line items. And it's, the line items are attached to the memo I've given you. The subject matter of this memo is creating balance of powers as intended by the charter. In reviewing the budget, I find that the operating expenses for the mayor's office, it appears, is $936,900. The legislative branch, or the city council's operating budget, is $332,500. That's a total difference of $604,400. That means the budget for the executive branch, the legislative, or the executive branch, the mayor's office, is 3 times the budget of the governing body, which is the city council. I feel that the city council needs funds to operate a more efficient council for the people who have elected us. We need more staff than one staff person that appears to be budgeted for 2013. So how do we level the playing field? And here is how we do it. We need to increase our budget, and this is how we do it. The mayor's budget, page 144. Now the council's budget is page 120 that I've provided to you. That's the first document attached to this memo. The second page is page 144 from the budget. And if you look at line item 9338, advertising, that's the mayor's budget. It has increased from $200 in 2012 to $5,000 for fiscal year 2013. That is a pretty dramatic increase in advertising for the mayor's office, from $200 to $50,000. I would like to reduce this back to the 2012 level, and I want you to remember that the mayor has many other resources at his disposal to promote himself and his office, such as contracts with Travis Peterson, employment of Derek Cosson, and other sources at his disposal for promoting and advertising himself and the mayor's office. The second source of funding to increase the council's budget would be looking at the MIS budget. I refer you to page 176 of the MIS budget, again to line item 9338, advertising. Don't pay any attention to my notes that are written out there by the side, by the way. I didn't have a clean copy of this, so this is what I had to attach. In 2012, their advertising budget was $2,500. They are now budgeting a $170,000 increase in that line item. I would like to take that item back to 2012 to $2,500. I would like to take that $170,000, which, by the way, nobody's given us any justification for, and I would like to apply that to the council's budget by reducing line items 9338 in both the mayor's budget and the MIS budget to the year 2012, using these funds to increase professional services to the city council. The budget for city council is page 120, which you have. Line item 9335 will increase the council budget. It will increase it by $219,800, giving the council an operating budget of $552,300. Please note that the mayor's office will still have a budget of $886,900 for operating expenses. Also note that the mayor's office will still be $334,600 higher than the 9-member council governing body. So that is what I am suggesting we do, that we increase our budget and utilizing the money from those sources, and that we use this money to hire additional staff that we may need, and also to contract for legal counsel and other professional services that we may need. And so I'm going to make a motion that council accept these changes to these line items.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Now, is that an amendment to it's got to be an amendment to the main motion. It can't be a substitute motion.
Yes, it's an amendment to the main motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Dr. Pratt, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Myers, for your thought and effort on this. I will support the motion on the floor, but with some hesitation. I believe that there are a few parts that concern me. I think to some extent that I would like to see us just hold that money, because I think there are a lot of needs in this government, and it might be of interest to consider how best to utilize that money. But I want to share with you why I support the motion and concept. You know, we sat through our advertising presentation on Monday, and there was a lot of concern. Ms. Myers, you did speak about leadership and the advertising implication that there had been a lack of leadership, and there have been many leaders for many years. The Maritime Park wouldn't have happened. Getting the toilet out of our living room wouldn't have happened. You know, we're in a great position for economic development because of the work of leaders who have come before us. Mr. Townsend and Mr. Johnson expressed a concern that I share about the duplication of services. You know, in looking through the budget, I noticed that in the mayor's office, one of the objectives is eliminate local government duplication and cut wasteful spending by collaborating and or consolidating with other government entities, and establish a united front with the city, county, and all non-governmental groups that are dedicated to regional and national economic development. Going alone on advertising doesn't really seem to mesh with that, and we're duplicating the efforts of the TDC, the chamber, and local businesses. You know, maybe if we had all the money in the world, we could just everybody could advertise and hope for the best, but we don't have that kind of money. And even if we had a lot of money, it would be a tough sell. And watching that presentation, I learned that what we're advertising for our $1 million a year isn't the city or the community. It's really about a CEO. Mm-hmm. And, you know, this is a CEO that changes every 4 years in theory. And is that really the city's responsibility with the economic development? Or is it really to provide the world-class services that'll make people want to live here? If you think about an old slogan, you know, our job of the city government is to make Pensacola a place where thousands live the way millions wish they did. And if we could do that, then maybe we wouldn't have to advertise so hard to get millions to move here. The advertising line item in the budget is about $400,000 more than last year across the total budget. Ms. Myers, you focused on those two areas, and most of that growth is in the CEO branding, the tourism, which I find duplicative. Just to put it in a context, that's more than we spend for the entire West Side Library, which I know Mr. Gerald's fought for a long time to get open. And if we have that kind of money thrown around, why don't we find another good spot for a library? You know, more than we spend on youth programs at our community centers. So I believe that marketing is critical, particularly for our enterprises, but I think we need to reduce spending on duplicative efforts. So I think that in general, I'll support the motion. If it fails, I have a substitute motion I would offer in its place. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Spencer.
I too appreciate fellow council member Myers' efforts and bringing not only something that is bringing something more to us than just conceptual, maybe a philosophy, and instead showing us hard numbers and doing the arithmetic. So I do appreciate that. My challenge at this moment is that the presentation seems to be, or I would say Councilwoman Myers' presentation and rationale is based more on how to create an equalizer, using money, funding, as the definition of what might create a better sort of balance or equalizer between the legislative branch and the executive branch. So I feel like there's two prongs to this sort of conversation. One being what Councilwoman Pratt focused on, and that was an interpretation and a perception about dollars and how they may be used to promote the city, with a difference of opinion about that, basically the effectiveness of it. And then Councilwoman Myers on the other side, I think, has introduced all of us to, again, her rationale for wanting to modify the budget as it's been presented, and again, more in the context of equalizing. So I think we're sitting here, I am, faced with whether to support it on one or both of those sort of levels. And I certainly am open to other council members' comments. I don't know who else has pressed the speak button.
Well, I've got Mr. Weiss and Mr. Geralds, but before we go to them, I just have a practical question for staff, whether it's Mr. Barker, Mr. Reynolds, or the city attorney, is regarding the Zimmerman contract. If we, does it call for a specific dollar amount? And are we putting ourselves at jeopardy by messing with these numbers? Does anybody know? Mr. Barker.
Mr. President, I will start. There is a base contract of the $170,000 that Ms. Myers had mentioned in the information technology budget and the mayor's budget. 140 of the 170 is the base contract, and then the mayor's, the entire 50,000 is part of the base contract.
So would we still be obligated to pay that even if we were to take this out of the budget?
Mr. President, thank you. I have not examined the terms and conditions of the contract, so I'm not able to answer that question. Generally speaking, if two parties enter into a contract that obligates the payment of a certain sum of money for services, that money is not paid, then it's a breach of contract, and the party that's not paid sues. But I'm not personally aware of the terms and conditions. I would be surprised if the city wasn't obligated to pay some money. That would seem to be why we enter into contracts.
Okay, I just wanted you to keep that, all of us to keep that in mind, is that regardless of how we move the money around, we still may be obligated to pay that. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I seconded this motion because I too support this in concept, looking at the prudent use of taxpayer dollars and these drastic increases for what is PR, is not the basic marketing that we have done with our enterprises in the past. I'm not going to go back through my concerns that I expressed on Monday and go into a great amount of detail on this. But I had mentioned about possibly defunding the entire Zimmerman contract at this point, and that was discussed on Monday. The enterprises would have the time the rest of this month to develop what they would need in a supplemental budget resolution. This budget is a snapshot. It is a point in time and a fluid document. So we have seen dozens of supplemental budget resolutions over the fiscal year for small changes to departments and also for large changes, Zimmerman contract being one of them last year. So it is not going to put anyone in peril. I have heard from not just a few, but dozens of people of what a mess this is. Their greatest concern is the effort of rebranding and the CEO branding portion of this, and we've all had concerns about that. Well, not all, but I've heard some concerns from council about that issue. And I just, in good faith, cannot support the contract as a whole. So should there be issue with us only doing a portion of this, or should this motion fail, I will bring that up following that as a substitute motion. Thank you.
Okay. So do I go to Dr. Pratt first for the substitute motion, or you first? Okay.
That's for you. She mentioned it first, I guess.
Right.
There's a cue.
Mr. Gerald.
You can clear my light, Mr.
All right,
President.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dubasan.
I appreciate council debating this point as carefully as you are, because I do believe that this is a critical statement that you as a council can make to our administrative branch and to the public in terms of the actual fiduciary responsibility that you regularly exercise. I have heard you people belittled. I have seen you backed into corners where you were put on the spot of being the big bad wolf for decisions that you actually had had no prior input into. This is an opportunity for you to make a statement, and I do believe that the two places that have been selected are something that the mayor's office could maneuver around to accommodate the necessary activities of this city. And I hear you folks speak regularly of how government should be doing only what it needs to do that citizens can't do. I believe the mayor is more than capable of making himself known and of having himself photographed at strategic points without us having to pay someone to arrange for it to happen. I also believe that some of the MIS activities that appear to be budgeted through this activity are already covered by our staff services, and so there is that duplication of effort. I would further point out to you that the Zimmerman agency contract seems to be overriding several other quasi-government and governmental entities with which this city interacts, and it seems to be the driving decision maker for how certain things are going to proceed, whether it is the Wayfair finding system, whether it is a sports board, whether it is a publication control factor. We need to have a city control, not an outside entity controlling how we interact with every other group. So I would really encourage you to give the mayor, since he is not here in person, but by this activity, the message that you are in charge of this city and that the citizens want any money that is spent to be spent for the betterment of this city, not just promoting some balloon idea of what it could be according to what someone else has assessed it should be. I believe that you can determine these things best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goss, before I call you up here, I just wanted to point out I called Ms. Dubasan because at the point she turned her card in, it seemed like she wanted to talk to the amendment of this. After we settle whether we're going to do this amendment or another, when we get to the main item, I'll call on you for comment. Okay. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was pulling up the agreement with the Zimmerman Agency, which our attorney hasn't reviewed, but and I'm having trouble finding the termination. I know former Councilwoman Diane Mack had suggested it was a 90-day termination. I would contend that if once we can take what action we need to tonight, if the attorney finally reviews the agreement and says we do need to have some payment or something, we can do a budget amendment in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Spencer.
And I appreciate Councilwoman Pratt looking at that document because I think that it is, I just would prefer to be making a decision with more solid information in front of me about a contract. I think that, I think it may be a 3-year contract, and with some sort of definitely a stipulated obligation. And as Attorney Mr. Messer stated, I mean, contracts, two-sided, two-party contracts typically have responsibilities outlined for both parties, and I just I feel like we're operating a little bit in zero gravity without having that information. My question, Mr. President, is there anyone here that can, maybe Mr. Reynolds has walked in, can he shed some light on this?
Mr. Reynolds,
Mr. President.
if you would, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and is this on? Can you hear?
Now it's
Okay.
on.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I wish council would have called me at some point in the last couple of days, because then I would have been able to be prepared on this particular issue, but I'm not. I certainly can get the information and we can take a look at it, but I don't have any specifics on the Zimmerman contract itself that I can offer.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't see any other lights. Nobody else from the Mr. Johnson.
I'm sorry, I apologize for not having my button pushed. Let me ask you, is it possible that we just table this till a later time, before, maybe in a few days, to where we could get some of these questions answered? Would that be appropriate, Mr. President?
Well, what do we have to get settled tonight?
I'll repeat the question, so I'll make sure I understand it. You're talking about tabling this substitute motion.
Well, it sounds like to me that
The amendment.
The amendment, now tabling the budget, that's, we would have to do a continued public hearing if you're talking about the resolution. But if you're just talking about the motion, that does not have to be settled today, but we would like to settle the entire budget today. Or you continue with another budget hearing at some other point.
public, yeah, we could just have another continued public hearing, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. Barker.
Okay. I'm going to call on you in just a minute, Mr. Deweese. I'm going to let you know, though, whether it's speaking on the amendments or to the main motions. I'm going
Just had a clarification.
No. I'm going to waive the rules on speaking twice because this is a hearing, and there's just, I think there's going to be a lot of action coming from one side to the other, and so if you'll just be patient with me. If you want to go back to the old way of doing it, and I'm doing this unless I hear an objection from council. If you decide that you want to go back to a more disciplined approach on this, just call for the orders of the day. And so, Ms. Deweese.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And I just had a question for clarification on what I had mentioned before about supplemental budget resolutions, that any decision we make today to do with the budget, if there is a true need or a wish of the mayor or a departmental need, they could do a resolution and bring that forward on October 1st. I just wanted that clarification so that we can take action today on what council's wishes are, and then they can bring forward a resolution at a later date. I just would like that answered, please.
Ms. Myers?
I think Councilwoman DeWeese asked a question.
Of Mr. Barker.
Oh, that was a question. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were making a statement there.
Mr. President, Councilwoman DeWeese, yes, we could prepare for the 13 budget, as we've done many times in 12, a supplemental budget resolution after October 1st for any adjustments.
Okay.
So do you understand why I asked that? I guess I should clarify that can go either way. We can ask for a budget adjustment as well, I believe, if we're concerned about something
All right,
within
right.
the department.
Well, and So, I mean, even without the amendment, I guess we could come back with a supplemental budget resolution and defund any portion of the contract. If we were to just take the main motion today alone, that you'd still have an opportunity to go back and do a supplemental budget resolution later.
Fails.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Geralds.
Thank you, Mr. President, and Mr. Johnson opened the door. And there are two statements in both of the items, page 144 and page 176, in which it stated, remember, the mayor has many other resources at his disposal to promote himself and his office. I'd like to know what those resources are before we allude to them. That's number one. And number two, page 176, there's been no explanation for this dramatic increase. And I believe, as Mr. Johnson has indicated and Mr. Spencer has said, that we're operating kind of at ground zero, that there will be opportunities with the supplemental budgets. There are opportunities for us to come back and address both of these items if this, if the motion fails, or even if it's tabled and we consider it at a later time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds, you care to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, and I hesitate to speak, but sometimes it's necessary. You know, I truly am sorry that members of this council were offended that that the city, and not the mayor's office, but the city was trying something new here. That we're trying to market this great city for others to see. In the past, we've had advertising budgets that are about as similar as to what we have here. The focus of this is not Mayor Hayward, but Mayor Hayward is the mayor of the city. Who are we going to put out there to be the proponent to move the city forward and to get people's attention and have them come here if it's not Mayor Hayward? It's not Bill Reynolds. It's not other people. It can't be a single council person. That's why this man was elected. And frankly, he's an asset in that regard. Having him out there and being a proponent is exactly what we need. And this is why. Your revenues are shrinking. For the foreseeable future, your revenues will continue to shrink unless we do something about it. There are decisions that have been made in the past that affect our revenue streams that we can't do anything about right now. The one area that we can actually do something about is trying to bring businesses and people into this great city. Ladies and gentlemen, that ain't going to happen by us sitting here on our hands. The only way it's going to happen is by a concerted effort, a professional effort to go out and market this place. And yes, the individual that is part of that marketing program is the mayor of this city, period. You can't market the city council. It's the mayor. You saw one piece and you got offended. That is one piece. There is so much more that's going to be done. There's so much more marketing that's going to be done. There is so much more that we have in store for this city in general. We couldn't, Councilwoman Myers, put everything in there in that one article. And by the way, we didn't write it. We just provided the opportunity to have it be written. But at some point, yes, uptown, we've got to bring that into it. Other great parts of the city will be brought into the marketing prospects. But you're not going to grow this city and you're not going to grow your revenues without a concerted effort. And again, I sincerely apologize if there's been some slight or some nose has been out of whack. But this once again goes back to this fundamental issue that we've had since I've been here, is this pull and tug between the executive and the legislative departments of this organization. And with, again, all due respect to this council, I've been trying to get you a council executive hired since I've been here. And you want hundreds of thousands of dollars more to hire more staff? I think it's incumbent upon all of us to understand that we have got to get over this fractious nature and try to move this city forward as one unit and one group. We may not always be pulling in the same direction. We may not always have the same goals, but we can have an honest dialogue about that, make a decision, and move this place forward. Your revenues will not grow unless we do something about it. And that's essentially what we're trying to accomplish with this budget. And if I may, just real quick, and then I'll sit down. I pulled the last budgets since 2002 on marketing and advertising. In 2010, we had over a $1 million budget for this, and nothing new was created out of that. I mean, it was the same old thing we're doing. This is new. This is something new for us. We're not just talking amongst ourselves. We're not. Uptown isn't talking to downtown, and the West Side isn't talking to East Hill. We're actually talking outside of the parameters. So, yes, it is going to cost us more, no doubt about it. But it's going to bring us results, and that's the key. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got 3 more council members that want to speak. Without weighing in on the motion itself for the amendment, I'll just give you my general feelings on how to deal with some of the issues here. I've already talked about you do supplemental budgets by funding things that weren't funded in this one, defunding things that were funded in this one. If the issue is the size of a contract that the mayor signed with the Zimmerman Agency, is I think that we can handle that by ordinance later, and putting limits on what the mayor's allowed to do on that. But right now I've got Mr. Geralds and Dr. Pratt and then Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that's one thing that I haven't heard mentioned here today that is directly related to our revenue streams. And I believe when I came on council, there may have been between 57,000 and 56,000 residents in the city of Pensacola. Presently, we're down to 51.9. That will have a direct impact on our revenue stream in years to come. We haven't really felt it yet, but that's coming. But I just wanted to remind council of our critically low population count, and that it's going to take some extracurricular activities to get people and businesses to move to the city of Pensacola. And over the past 10 years or so, we have not been able to do that. I do realize the impact that Ivan and some other interventions have had on our population count. But we are, in my opinion, I feel that we are at a critically low number, and that needs to be addressed. If we cannot get our population up, our revenue stream will continue to shrink. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Councilman Geralds, that's a critical, that 50,000 number is critical in a lot of respects. And it's really critical because once you fall below $50,000 in population, all of those automatic federal grants that you get go away. You fall under that 50,000 person threshold, it all becomes competitive. And so a lot of that money that comes into this city will not. So that's another critical piece. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to speak a moment regarding Mr. Reynolds' remarks. And I share his concerns, the things that he mentioned. The problem we face right now, and I'm sorry that it's at the second budget hearing where we're trying to resolve what really has been a problem for several months. Maybe a good case can be made for this advertising contract, but we're hearing right now, some people believe we have no choice. We're stuck with it for 3 years. when we're talking about, oh, the mayor decided to set a new direction, when the council, in advertising, when the council's the policy-making body of this government, it's difficult. You know, he referenced trying to work as one government with one voice. And if we want to do that, then we need to be part of that voice and be part of that decision-making. I think in this case, what happened is the cart got put before the horse. If we're going to enter into such a large contract, which some people feel is irrevocable, and I disagree, but if it's an irrevocable large contract for $1.2 million for 3 years, shouldn't the council, who is the policy-making, the budget-setting body of this government, have a voice? And so I believe that we do have a voice, and I believe that tonight is our opportunity to express our opinion. I am open to further dialogue. I will welcome Mr. Reynolds or the mayor to come and make the case why we need this, how those ads that we saw will help us grow our population, why we won't work in concert with our partners, with the chamber, tourism, the county, in opposition to some of our goals. But there can be cases made. They've just not been made until this week when we're dealing with the budget. And so, in a sense, this is a message to say, come to us with your ideas. Convince us to give the money, and we might. But without being told, well, we've got to do this, and we already did it, so we really don't care what you think. It doesn't really make for a functioning government, that we really need to address that problem. And it's the wrong night to fix what's been sort of our problems going on. But I think by reducing the advertising money, it sends a signal that we want to have a conversation about how this city moves forward. Thank you.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, and I want to address some specific comments that Mr. Reynolds made. First of all, I think this council, in my opinion, needs to have a clearer vision of what our legislative and governing body role is. And yes, we haven't hired an executive staff, and I want to thank you for all of the hard work you've put into making that happen. And I think I know that it's probably been very frustrating to you. And I'm very frustrated too. I just want you to know, but I want you to know that I do know that you've put in a lot of work into helping us achieve that goal, and I'm sorry we haven't gotten there yet. I can't support this budget with these types of expenditures for advertising and these two items that I've mentioned, the MIS and the mayor's office budget. We have spent an enormous amount of money with Zimmerman, and I will tell you, from my observation, the things that I've read online, in blogs, statements that people have made to me, it has been a failure. People feel that it has not promoted the city of Pensacola. Now, it may be good if you want to support a region. It might be a good slogan to replace the word panhandle, which the mayor says he doesn't like. But I can't see that it supports the city. And I might be able to support this if I knew that this effort was going to be beneficial. But I don't believe it has been. And let me give you an example of how I think it could have been beneficial. For instance, our primary business district is booming. It's unstoppable. Businesses constantly want to relocate there. We have a Marshalls that just interviewed hundreds of people who want to apply for the 90 jobs that are going to be located in the heart of uptown Pensacola and in my district. Now, if that company were coming downtown and had 90 jobs, we would roll out the red carpet. We're not providing one dime of incentives for this company. They are relocating to a part of the city of Pensacola because they know that it is economically feasible for them to be there. But let me tell you the sad thing. Do you know that most people who come to our primary business district by the thousands and thousands all day long, most of them do not know they're in the city limits? Now, if we took advertising money and we promoted our uptown business district and the neighborhoods, we have affordable neighborhoods in the city limits all around, interwoven with our primary business district. I would hope that those 90 people who are going to be filling those marshal positions, wouldn't it be great if they knew they could live and walk within 5 minutes from marshals in one of our great neighborhoods? And this is what really concerns me. I see all of the promotion that has gone on, and I think a lot of it has been wasted because we have not taken advantage of one of our great assets, and that is our primary business district and those neighborhoods that are affordable. That's where we can increase our population. We have affordable housing. We have a high concentration of rental properties in that district, in that primary core business district. And we are not letting people know that those communities, that those apartments exist, and that they're in the city limits. We can grow our population. We can make people want to live here, to desire to live here. And when I walked door to door and I would meet people who've lived in my district for 40 and 50 years, and I say, why have you lived here so long? Because it's convenient. And we say we want to promote walkable, sustainable communities. We've already got one, but it gets no attention. And yet we're pouring all of these advertising monies into one thing. I would love to see the mayor standing in the middle of uptown Pensacola and holding a photo op and saying, this is uptown Pensacola. You're in uptown. You're in the city of Pensacola. I would like to have him standing on every major street corner over there. I would love that. I would love that. And I would even pay for it out of my discretionary funds. But I cannot support what I have seen so far. And when you say we're going to have more, I'm afraid it's going to be more of the same. And that's what really scares me.
Okay. Mr. Rollins, before you respond to that, we've got one other councilman that wants to speak, and just kind of let you wrap it up after that. Mr. Johnson. Sure.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to kind of tack on to what Dr. Pratt said. I appreciate that. It's kind of like, you know, the advertising contracts explained to us after there seems to be an issue raised. It would have been nice to be included in the process. It would have been nice if the agency would have come before this council and the mayor even, and explained to us their intent and their what they hope to accomplish with this, and you know, maybe even ask for input for us. I know that we're rarely asked for input unless we now determine that we have some rights, and we have an opportunity here with this budget to be heard. And when issue is brought up that there could be a problem with this contract, all of a sudden we have Zimmerman here before us Monday to give us an hour-and-a-half presentation explaining their contract and what we can expect and who their client list is. And it was an impressive client list, I must say, but it's unfortunate that we weren't included in the decision and the process. But that happens often with this council. And we hear about how there seems to be this pull and tug between the both branches of government. But if some would just include this, if they would include this us in some of this process and decision making, instead of it's almost having it forced upon us to a certain degree. You know, maybe things would go a little bit smoother, but that doesn't seem to be the way things happen here. But it would have been nice to be included in this decision and process of this huge contract that's happened. So, and I also want to touch on something that happened to me a couple of months ago. My special friend and I were down south, and there was a park ranger there at this park we went to, and she said that her and her husband were talking about relocating to Pensacola, Florida. And she said she Googled Pensacola, Florida, and that after they had Googled Pensacola, Florida, that were reconsidering. And this is a person I had never met before. We had just come upon them at Fort Jefferson in the park down there. Again, it was a park ranger, and she said that crime was the reason that they were reconsidering moving to Pensacola. It wasn't because we didn't have an adequate rebranding effort, or we weren't slickly advertised, or we didn't have a cool slogan, but it was crime. It was crime. Councilwoman Myers said Monday that she thought about making a motion to adjust a part of the budget, $120,000, at the very end of our meeting Monday, and I said, yeah, that would be money, I think, well spent on fighting our violent crime in our community. That's what concerns me, that I'm not sure when we talk about loss of population and these things. I think that branding is a part of that, but I think that we also must consider issues such as crime, and is our money better spent in an advertising, spending all that money on advertising, or would it be better maybe thinking of creative ways to fight crime and those type of things, educating our youth and trying to keep them off the streets in crime situations. So I'm struggling with all this, but we're trying to make a good decision. I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of council. Thank you.
Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Councilwoman Myers, you're dead on. You're absolutely dead on. And if we don't have the resources to do that kind of stuff, to put that focus on Uptown as well as the other parts of this city, then we're not going to be able to achieve that. Councilman Johnson, without the resources in order to fund police officers, to fund firefighters, and to do the things that all good cities need to take care of, without the funding streams, we're not going to be able to do it. We have to change the dynamic. We have to try something different. We cannot continue doing the same thing that you have done for the last decade and continue to see the impact that it's having upon your population. You can sit here and you can determine that you're not going to do anything, and then we failed. We have to try something. This is a try. This is an attempt to make a difference. We need to try to secure every new person we can into this city to keep it growing, because we're not going to have those resources, and we're not going to have the ability to put the spotlight on the parts of this city that we need to. Thank you.
Let's end this discussion now. Now, the motion is to amend the main motion as stated by Ms. Myers, and the details are captured on video and audio, and we also have her sheet before us. I'm not sure that I can get it into a succinct statement.
I can try. Or you want me to restate the motion, or?
Well, sure, that'd be best.
Okay, well, the motion is that the council amend the budget, line items 9338 on page 144, the mayor's budget, eliminating the $50,000 for advertising for fiscal year 2013, allowing the $200,000 to remain, that we amend line item 9338 on page 176 in the MIS budget to take that budget back to the 2012 level of $2,500, that we take the $170 and the $170 and the $50,000. That's $170,000 and $50,000, and apply that to line item 9335 in the city council's budget.
Okay. Everybody understand that? Mr. Barker.
Yes, sir, Mr. President, if I could, I'm glad she repeated the motion so that I could understand it. And of course, I had plenty of time to think that's what she was doing.
Let me give you.
Now, in the total budget, there are different funds. And so the Central Services Fund, where information technology is reported, is a fund that is, in essence, charged to all the other departments of the city. So the reduction of the $170,000 from line item 9338 in that fund would result in charges for services to other department reduction of $170,000, and it keeps the budget balanced in that fund. The $50,000 going from the general fund, from the mayor's budget to the city council's budget line item, keeps that budget in balance in the general fund. Where the imbalance occurs is if you want to put the $170,000 that you reduced in the Central Services Fund in the line item in the council budget. I believe there's, and I'd have to get the exact number, but I believe there's only about 50% of that is charged to the general fund, that we could reduce department's budget in the general fund by that in order to accomplish increasing the city council's budget. So I just want, with what Ms. Myers has suggested in the motion on the floor, it will not be a full $170,000 if that's what she was trying to accomplish, plus the $50,000 going into the council budget. It would only be roughly half of the $170,000 going into the council budget, and then the budget would remain balanced.
Okay, that's fine. I can.
Okay.
Whatever. Just take it out of where it is now.
Okay.
Whatever we get is what we get.
Please vote. Okay, that passes on a 5-3 vote. Thank you. So we're back to the main motion as amended. And before we get into discussing that, and before I call Mr. Goss up here, you raised an issue, Mr. Barker, about charging things to other funds. I know that I've heard inklings at committee meetings and council meetings that there's a particular target on the 7th floor that people are concerned about. And my thoughts on that is, even if we were to eliminate not just budgeting for one particular position, but we eliminated the mayor's budget altogether, I think it's, what is it, $900,000 more or less, give or take a couple hundred.
Yes, sir. The budget is $936,900.
Even if we were to eliminate that in its entirety, it wouldn't necessarily, in my understanding, change a thing on the 7th floor, because so much of that could be charged to the other departments itself.
Yes, sir. That is the net number of the budget,
Yeah.
of the mayor's budget after the $644,900 and cost recovery.
Yeah, okay. All right. All right, Mr. Goss. The streets are looking pretty good right now, huh? So-
Since I'm here, yeah, they probably are. I'm Eric Goss, the president of Fraternal Order Police. Lodge 71 members are the makeup of the Pensacola Police Department. I'm not here on behalf of the Pensacola Police Department. I'm here on behalf of my members. They'd probably like to tell you all themselves, but a little worried about talking to y'all individually since the new whatever got passed down through the charter. I will say, and I'm not a budget expert, and I'm just hoping you don't rubber stamp a lot of things that are going through. We got Mr. Reynolds talking about leaving no one behind. Well, my guys have felt like they've been left behind for about 6 years now. I'm not going to go into specifics because we're hoping to negotiate fairly, which we're still going through, and well, the budget's getting passed anyways, no matter what happens. I will say that in my 14 years of being there, my members are. They're down and they're hurting, and it's been over and over again, and we feel like we're being overlooked. We especially when we saw this budget and it came out, $1 million for a 7th floor administration. You got money here and there, and they tell us there's no money, and I see why. I see why there's no money. I just hope that y'all don't sit here and rubber stamp this. I mean, you got guys that are out there that are missing their holidays, their birthdays, that are working nights, so y'all are safe getting shot at, having to shoot others. It's nothing like y'all have seen, and it's sad looking at this, and it's sad hearing the bickering going back and forth, and just want y'all to know that there's others that are really hurting that this budget does affect. Look at that. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson and Ms. Myers.
Yes. Detective Goss, thank you for all that you do and all the police officers do for our city. I appreciate that. My comments earlier weren't directed to them. I know they're doing all they can with the resources that they have available to them. Mr. President, can I get some clarification from staff, please, on the mayor's line item 9335 on professional services, the 132? I was considering a motion to adjust that by $120,000 and direct that money to the police department for fighting crime. Could I get some clarification on how that motion needs to be made, if that's appropriate, et cetera?
Sure. I think we don't need much weighing in from Mr. Barker on that, considering what he just told us. But would you like to respond, Mr. Barker?
Yes, Mr. President, if I understood Councilman Johnson's inquiry, is that he would like to know if we reduce line item 9335, how to get it into the police department budget. Is that the question?
Yes, sir. To fight crime that I feel that is needed.
It would be much like the motion that Ms. Myers just made as it related to the general fund, and that you would move $120,000 from the professional services in the mayor's budget and move it into the police department budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion that's in order, and I just wanted to ask you if you would consider a friendly amendment. Sure. And putting that into the police officers training fund.
So moved, and I will accept that. Yes.
Okay.
Second stands.
Okay. Ms. Myers.
I didn't have my light on, it was already on. I didn't have
Okay.
my light on to speak to that motion.
She just keeps it on.
Oh.
I just keep it on.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public on Mr. Johnson's amendment? Okay, all right, good, all right. Please vote. And that passes on a vote of 7-1. Okay. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will be brief because I made council aware that I would be bringing this up about the Zimmerman contract. And council may be perfectly pleased with the amendment that was made. But when I listen to council and the concerns that they have, and I've heard from the citizens, at length about the issues that they have with how this was accomplished, some things that have come to light since the contract was signed in March, the issues in Okaloosa County of the fraud that was down there, the ongoing investigation, the lack of accounting controls and procedures with the yacht being purchased for $710,000, the issues. But beyond that, what I've heard from citizens is that this glimpse, as we're told, this isn't everything, that there's more to come, from the Zimmerman Agency has truly missed their mark. And I don't want to go into too much detail, but the same week that this was rolled out, you know, I have the honor of greeting international visitors with the citizen diplomacy, and the group from Turkmenistan had come. And I'll probably blog about this because the irony is just too big to let that pass by. But they were going through a necessary rebranding at that point. Their leader for many years had changed the days of the week to his mother's name and his name and other family members, changed the national anthem, it was a terrible situation. But the irony of that is that we had to tell them and explain to them that we were being rebranded and that we used to be the City of Five Flags. And I can't tell you how proud I am to share Mayor Emeritus Vince Webb's speech and greeting with international visitors, and part of that being the City of Five Flags. And it was a gut check for me. It was a reality check that, you know, this proposed history, $50 million that UWF wants to do, it has everything to do with our Spanish occupation and our British time and our French and our Civil War era. We're the City of Five Flags, and the Zimmerman Agency has come up with a rebranding that the citizens that I've heard from don't feel is necessary. We are the City of Five Flags. But beyond that, this contract and the way funds were gathered up from unfilled funded positions and from all different areas of our budget for fiscal year 12, I still question. I can't get an answer from anyone. And I have a finance background and have put it all together and listed it out. It just didn't make sense. But I've listened to you tonight, and I've heard Councilman Gerald's concerned about our shrinking population and the revenue stream. Dr. Pratt, you talked about duplication of effort. Why are we turning our back on the TDC and the chamber and the county for that matter? Ms. Myers talking about Uptown and that no incentives are being given to businesses that are building at a pace that is, you know, 10 times more than anywhere else in the city. And Councilman Johnson talking about that it's too late for them to come on Monday and explain to them what their vision is for the city, and that we weren't included in the process. Bottom line, if we don't take a good look at this and send this back to the mayor and staff and say, there has to be some policy decisions made here, this has to be something that council addresses, this is not good government, bottom line. And that's why I feel the need to just defund the entire contract, reset, take a better look at this and include the citizens. This is their city and it's their taxpayer dollars and it's their, you know, 3-year contract that you've entered into for them on their behalf. So I'm making a motion to defund the remaining portions of the Zimmerman contract and return that amount to fund balance.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I'd like to comment on the statements Councilwoman DeWeese said. I think if this passes, I think that we, at some point, this city has got to start getting on the same page, reading from the same playbook as the TDC. We've got 3 different advertising efforts going on right now. We've got Visit Pensacola. We've got, I'm looking at an invitation right now from Greater Pensacola Chamber that's got another logo with the arrows on it. And we've got a 3rd effort now going on with the upside of Pensacola and our new logo. Ms. Zimmerman talked about confusion Monday. And I spoke about being confused about, we've got at least 3 efforts going on advertising our community. And if this motion passes, I would encourage the mayor's office to, let's all try to get on the same page. We spoke about Montgomery, Alabama, and how they all are on the same page, and it doesn't seem to be real difficult for them. I believe their population in the city of Montgomery is 200,000 people, included in that county there, inside that county, which is somewhat large itself. So it can be done. I think Ms. Zimmerman even talked about that it does happen in other communities. But this fragmented effort that we have here, it's just real hard for me to stomach and swallow. I just don't know if this is in the best interest of this city, of this community, of this whole area, really. I'd like to see a more combined effort with the TDC and the Chamber of Commerce of the city of Pensacola. It seems very easy and logical to me to get out on our own. I struggle with that. I think that I think Councilwoman Pratt talked about duplication. And I'm wondering if we're just not duplicating things, if we're not sending a confusing message out there as we promote our city. So I'll look forward to hearing from other council people, but it's a very interesting comments, Councilwoman DeWeese, but I'd like to see us all try to get on the same page, that being the TDC, the Chamber, and the City of Pensacola. Thank you.
Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. And I, too, appreciate the debate that we are currently engaged in, and appreciate the respective perspectives that I'm hearing. Right at the outset, I'm going to state I do not feel it is necessary to defund the Zimmerman contract to orchestrate the collaboration that Councilman Johnson just articulated. I think there's a really strong message that this council is clearly conveying, and began to communicate that to the representatives of the Zimmerman Agency when they were here Monday. I think that they would be the first to agree that the orchestration, the collaboration, the reduction of any confusion would be, and there is, they would welcome having that described and defined as their scope of work. So I do not feel it is necessary to defund defund that contract. And I want to point out that after being installed as a council member, I very quickly became aware of, I think already I said something about zero gravity tonight, so my theme is gravity and gravitational forces. But after being placed on the council, I immediately became aware of what I would call various gravitational forces within the same city. And those gravitational forces, perhaps we invite them as individual council members. I respect and trust that the representation that we have heard from council members saying that they've received negative comments. I don't think that's fabricated. I'm an architect. I'm very aware of the variety of opinions when it comes to aesthetics and art and graphics and promotion of marketing material. But I've got to say, one of the gravitational forces that's been heading in my direction is they're positive. I hear people love it. They're excited to see the fresh new look with energy. And those people are just as passionate as those that are approaching other council members, saying they're unhappy with the change, they do not like the departure from the expected. So that's a conversation. Again, I can make a presentation as an architect to a committee, which, by the way, the AIA strongly suggests that an architect, again, raise their fees substantially when working with a committee because of the opposing opinions and the variety of preferences. But that's not what sways me, whether I like a wave and a crest and aqua, and or whether I prefer a flag. I think we've got top talent. I think that top talent can listen to us, and that's all I have to say.
Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I've been listening for quite a while. I'd like to begin with the fact that the title City of Five Flags aptly describes our behavior, and it describes it a certain way. And I would take that and turn it around and say, well, with all of the flags and all of the people that wanted to come to the countries and others that wanted to come to the city of Pensacola and manage it or operate it, It's kind of like we have the TDC, the Chamber, Zimmerman, and everybody. We're still the city of five flags. We're still doing the same kind of stuff they did years ago. Now, I want to remind all of you that I have tried on numerous occasions. We had one date, we couldn't get enough people, we rescheduled and put 2 dates on the table. We still did not get enough people. And what we are doing here this afternoon is descriptive, and it will continue. Our inability to come to decisions in the way that we've all described the desire to do so. I urge this council to sit down and to delineate the roles and responsibilities of the mayor's office and of this council. As a group, we failed to do that. And until we do it, we're going to continue to thrash about like a fish out of water, searching for the right and the correct and the appropriate roles and responsibilities of each body. In the absence of that, we won't get it right. We won't get it straight. Why there was reluctance in sitting down and doing that, I don't know. But I do know if we continue to operate this, we'll keep doing the same thing over and over, and therefore we're branded as the Council of 9 Flags. Because we're doing the same silliness over and over. And until we sit down, go through the charter as it's written, amend it if necessary, we will continue to behave in the same manner. And what we're doing this afternoon is doing just what we should be doing in a meeting, versus waiting until we get documents that we need to approve and move the city forward. We want to discuss who does what. And personally, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You know, it's like spinning your wheels. So until we agree to sit down and look at our roles and responsibilities in an intelligent way, we will continue to do the same thing the same way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilwoman DeWeese, I sympathize with your effort. I believe at this point I will not support the motion on the floor, simply because while it is a budget for next fiscal year, it is looming awfully close, and I know that particularly our enterprises have already started planning what they're spending for advertising dollars in the next coming months, and I think this is a worthy discussion to have at a future council meeting, and I think that basically our actions on Ms. Meyer's motion bring us to definitely have sent the message, and it brings this conversation back to us. We will be finding out a lot more about this contract and the details and unwinding clauses and things like that. So I think that at this time, Ms. Meyer's motion is sufficient to affect some of the change. As Mr. Reynolds said, we have to change the dynamic, have to do something different, and not just with advertising, but with how this government has functioned. And I think that we've sent that message with our amendments tonight, and I'm eager to vote on the budget as amended. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bearwood, are you interested in speaking to the proposed amendment?
Yes.
Okay, please come up.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just reading over the Zimmerman agreement. I think it's very interesting. I hope I'm calmer when I'm sitting up there than when I sit out here, because I get more excited out here. But it says, under miscellaneous provisions, no waiver, alterations, consent, or modification of any of the provisions of this agreement shall be binding unless in writing and signed by the mayor or his designee. And that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. It's a very simple document. There's not a lot to it, not a lot of opt-out clauses or anything. And what this amounts to is a surprise, a big surprise for the council, for the citizens. And while I respect Councilman Spencer's hearing from people that they're positive about it, I was out walking door to door quite a bit during my campaign, and after this was sprung on me, after I got an invitation through another person to attend, I was quite surprised we were abandoning the 5 flags and going with a new, completely different logo that really didn't make a lot of sense to me. And the people that I shared it with, it wasn't everybody, it was quite a few, they were very upset because they didn't think that anything was wrong with the city of Five Flags. And, you know, we've got our union, the head of our police union here. The morale is down in the police force. They're working 12-hour shifts, which was an issue a couple years ago when I was running for mayor, is that 12-hour shift is a long time for somebody to be on the job. And we need more opportunities for the police to be out there doing community policing, not running from one call to another. And I think we need some more funding within the police department. You know, we've got $1 million incentive fund for economic development that we're talking about as well. And I can think of nothing better for economic development than making sure we have a safe city, because no one, just like the web search that was done when it was Googled, you know, if you Google this place and you see all the drive-by shootings and everything, which a lot of stuff pops up quickly because P&J and Gannett pay a lot more for their rankings than everyone else does. That's what our identity is going to be, are things like that. And we have got to make sure, before we put a new face on this place, that we have the type place people want to come to. And I understand what Mr. Reynolds is saying about the 50,000. We don't need to drop below 50,000, but the fact is we've got to focus on what it is that the city has to do, what its fiduciary responsibility is to do, and that's not to market. It is to make sure our citizens are safe and there are opportunities for them to live and play and work. And I believe that this contract was done in a way that just kind of didn't even include you, and I think that's wrong. I think as the governing body of this city, which clearly states in the charter you are, you should have been involved. The community should have been involved. It should have been like in Tallahassee, where they had the city and the county involved. One of my issues when I ran was that I think we need to work together better as a city and a county, and I think doing this creates a separate entity to market, which we don't really need. And a lot of what the marketing, it's not business, it's not really even, a lot of it's not even for business, marketing to business. It's through ESP, it's through the airport, and I've seen that commercial. I posted on YouTube so everyone can see it. I don't think that does a very good job branding us at all. It's not Pensacola related. It's some type of ad that I think anyone, probably my son, could do with a computer and some type of video programming software. It doesn't brand us. And I just urge that you think more carefully about this decision on this particular amendment, because I think you have an opportunity here to take action and to defund this item and send a message back that we want to be included as the governing body. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bear, for your comments. I just find it very, very troubling that we have this contract to deal with. And I'm going to study this contract closely from a legal perspective in terms of how we can get out of it. I do think that there are benefits to advertising if it's done right. However, you know, how do you measure the payback from advertising? And I say that because the district I live in, we get no advertising. We get no promotion. And yet businesses are flocking there. Businesses like Marshall's. Oh, did anyone notice that McDonald's moved out of Escambia County into the city of Pensacola? They built their new McDonald's, relocated it from Brent Lane in the county to the city. Now, if that happened with any other business moving from the county into downtown, we would be just having a party over it. But these things go unnoticed. But what I'm trying to say is that we get no advertising, and yet businesses want to come there. And the reason, there are a lot of reasons I want to promote Uptown, and it's mainly, quite frankly, for the neighborhoods. Because when people see the value of our neighborhoods, they want to move there. They want, and it causes our property values to go up, and our communities to improve, and our tax base to improve. And people take pride in their neighborhoods when they take pride in where they live. And I've had businesses, every business person I've talked to in the Uptown area, when I talk to them about Uptown, they've never heard the concept, and they say, oh, I love that. One very prominent businessman told me, you know, people are always asking me, where are you? Now I can tell them, you know, because we have a name. And, I could feel, I'm not going to feel good about the Zimmerman contract, the amount of money, but I could feel a lot better about it knowing that the mayor and Zimmerman realize that they have made a big mistake. And going forward, maybe they can get it right. And maybe I'm going to take Mr. Reynolds at his word. Uptown will get some benefit out of it. And I will let you know that I'm having to pay out of my money to have a young man create a website to promote Uptown Pensacola. Now, why should I do that? But I am, because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in that area of Pensacola. I want people to know they're in the city of Pensacola. I love this city. Every neighborhood, every part of this city, I love. And if I have to spend my own money to promote a part of this city that has been neglected by our advertising money, then I will do it, and that's what I'm doing. But I would love to have the mayor on board with me. I want Mayor Ashton Hayward. He is wanted by Sherry Myers. I want him very much. I want him in Uptown. And I don't have to be there by his side. He can be the face of Uptown. I don't care. He's prettier than I am. He has better teeth and all that, and probably better hair and all that. People like to look at him. I'm sure I would. They don't need to look at me. Probably wouldn't want to. But I'm hoping Mr. Reynolds is back there. He's listening. He said he was. But if this motion doesn't pass and we go forward with this money, I hope that it is in the future spent in the right way.
Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Charles Bear brought up the termination agreement in the actual contract, and I have a question for Mr. Messer, and I will apologize for putting you on the spot, but it has to do with the RFP process and the response to it. So I believe, and this is what I need clarification on, is that when we issue an RFP and the responses to that RFP are also binding as part of the relationship that is being entered into. And there is a termination clause in the RFP that was published, I believe. If you look at item 22, termination for convenience, a contract may be terminated in whole or in part by the city at any time for any reason in accordance with this clause whenever the city shall determine that such termination is in the best interest of the city. Any such termination shall be effected by the delivery to the contractor at least 5 working days before the effective date of a notice of termination, specifically the extent to which performance shall be terminated and the date upon which termination becomes effective. An equitable adjustment in the contract price shall be made for the completed services, but not for amount. No amount shall be allowed for anticipated profit or unperformed services. So what that sounds like to me is we're in the clear on the motion that is already passed, but we're also in the clear on terminating this entire contract and starting over. And we can do supplemental budget resolutions. They can take, enterprises can take the budgeted amount that they have and ask for that resolution to be crafted and approved immediately within the beginning of the fiscal year. A lot of ESP, I don't know if you follow the progression of expended funds for advertising, but a lot of it is towards the end of a budget year. So there isn't an urgency October 1st that absolutely this has to be in place. There are dollars. I'm saying return it to fund balance. This is a prudent measure on council's part to say there is a policy issue here as well. We would like to reset this process and start from the beginning again. If we wanted to ask the same respondents to come back, because they spend a great deal of time presenting, but to hear from the citizens and have some open discourse to solve this problem and not just put a Band-Aid on it. So I urge you to support this today, and council can move forward with a clean slate on advertising. Thank you.
Mr. Gerald.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm glad you waived the rules on the number of times we can speak. You know, I've never heard the kind of enthusiasm, support, It's not a matter of uptown and downtown, it's the whole town. The west side has been neglected for years. But what happens up here, it's the one who screams the loudest and the longest. And we have a habit of focusing on different areas and neglecting others. What I'd like to see us do as a council is to consider the entire city of Pensacola. Because as I said, it's not uptown, it's not downtown. We all know we've neglected the west side of town, we've neglected the Belmont and De Villiers area, and we just go around and around. And unless the focus and the attention is going to be given to the whole city, then we're just wasting our time, and I call the question.
Well, we need a second for that to happen. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm real proud of this council tonight. You know, I think this is a real healthy debate. We'll probably be beat up on a blog tomorrow. The person that has the blog will probably write his own comments and use a different name and beat us up pretty good. But I'm really proud of this council tonight for the debate, this healthy debate that we're having. I think it's a good thing. I think this council is starting to find its footing about some different powers that it's had. It seems like the last few months this council's come together, and I'm proud of the council. We'll be beat up and called names and that and all. Now, I guess that's part of the job. But I wanted to also comment on Mr. Bear, Councilman-elect Bear's comments about crime. And I don't want to go through the story again about when you Google Pensacola, but if someone Googles Pensacola or they hear about this upside and they go, oh God, I'm real excited, and they Google us and find out we have crime, it hurts this community. And I sometimes wonder about our priorities. Of course, advertising's important. Marketing is important. I recently had a friend of mine tell me that he stopped advertising and his client went down to, he had 2 calls at his office that week. He started advertising again. They had 100 calls the next week. So advertising, I know, is important, and I think it's a value, and I support an effort in that regard. But we must have our priorities. If again people Google us and they show it turns up that we have high crime, if we have drive-bys, if we have shootings 5 out of 7 days a week, it's reported in the News Journal and WAR-TV. I'm just not sure that that's a good thing, or I know it's not a good thing. You know, I watch our local TV station, and I encourage everyone here and everyone that's listening out there to watch it. The first 5 or 7 stories are about crime. We watched the 10 o'clock news last night. It's depressing. We watched it last night, and I encourage everyone to. I believe the first 7 stories was about crime in this community. But yet we feel that it's very important to go through with this advertising contract. So sometimes I question our priorities. We had a detective here that I have a lot of respect for. I have a lot of respect for our police department. That talks about 12-hour days. It talks about poor morale. I hope that this council heard it, and I think they did, and I hope that everyone in this community heard it. I want to do something about that. I want to do something about crime in our community. That's the things that are important to me at this point. Again, I understand the importance of advertising, of branding, and all that. We heard of the successes of Austin and Charlotte Monday when I guess better late than never, Zimmerman came before us and explained their vision. Better late than never. And again, we weren't included in that process. I wish we would have. But on a positive note, and I hope I want to end this in positive, Ms. Myers, I was with a realtor today in beautiful uptown Pensacola. They're in your district. And they're talking about a Costco that was looking at some property there. They were talking about a Dick's Sporting Goods that was looking at a piece of property there near Cordova Mall. And amazingly, there was no talk of any incentive, any loan forgiveness or tax abatement or anything. So we might have a couple more new businesses there. But with that, I'll close and listen to the rest of the council. But I'm proud of the council tonight. I'm sure we'll be beat down tomorrow. So just get prepared. And again, I look forward to hearing from the rest of the council. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Barker, do you want to speak now? We've got two other council members that,
I will wait for council.
okay, Mr. Spencer.
Ironically, I continue to get educated by more experienced council members that bolsters or makes me feel more confident in our ability as council to still approach Zimmerman if this particular motion does not pass, and that motion for the defunding, because I have, the more I think about it, I've got more questions. But we meet on a regular basis, and I am confident that those upcoming meetings, again, should the motion not pass, will involve this item on the agenda. But I'm just thinking about some of the logistical questions or logistics-related questions I have about just if suddenly a provider of intellectual property, if the contract is severed, certainly I know the intellectual property becomes, that being the creative product, should be ours to use in dealing with art and design, but sometimes there's that provision is not allowed. There's just some more details in the contract. I think we can direct Mr. Messer to take a look at that, and we can get answers to the questions. But again, I don't support the defunding because the more I think about it, I think there's a lot more unanswered questions. And finally, I just can't help but comment, although Councilman Johnson is not here, I do want to remind him that whether he be in Topeka or Las Vegas or outside Seattle, I challenge him to find any local TV station that doesn't showcase the local crime, because that does tend to be the vehicle to attract and increase an audience for any newscast. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is going to be my last statement, Councilman Spencer. And I will now I'll have the president shut my speaker off. My speak button. And he said he would help. I just wanted to clarify something about the uptown concept. I didn't make that up. It's actually in our comprehensive plan all the way from page 57 to page 173, and the council before me approved that plan. Mr. Gerald, you voted for it, I believe. And so if you look at our comprehensive plan and the institutions that are the core institutions in that uptown concept, the airport and Pensacola State College are in Councilman Wu's district, not mine. Some of uptown is actually in Councilman Gerald's district. So, you know, this isn't just about my district. It encompasses a large part of the institutions that the city of Pensacola is proud of, and that hires a lot of our citizens, pays a lot of, generates a lot of tax revenue for us. It isn't just about District 2. There are two other districts, District 1 and District 5, and even, I believe, some of the other districts are adjacent to that whole uptown definition in our comprehensive plan. So I just want people to know this is not a Sherry Myers invention. And I just wanted to clarify that, and hopefully, you know, get the rest of the council on board with implementing our comprehensive plan, promoting our uptown, connecting it to downtown. That's the concept in our comprehensive plan, is connectivity. I would also urge you to look at Uptown Houston, just Google Uptown Houston and see the beautiful website they have promoting their Uptown concept. Uptown Fort Worth, Texas. There are a lot of cities that have uptowns, and certainly Pensacola is big enough, sophisticated enough, urbanized enough to have both a great downtown, a great uptown, and great connectivity between the two of them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barker.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. If I could, I would like to remind council that for this evening, we're here to approve appropriations. Now, what is, and I don't mean that any way except the way I mean. You're letting the departments know whether you're going to give them this money and they can make their plan or not. And by pulling the appropriations out of the budget, you're telling the departments, Mr. Suarez, do not plan on any marketing. You're telling Ms. Crawford, stop what you're doing October 1st and no marketing. Now, the way things work around here, my 32 years with the city, if you think, my experience has been that if you do stop a contract, the time you get around to selecting somebody else on the outside, I will say is 180 days, and that's probably quick. So you've lost advertising, and I'm unwilling as the CFO to see that for those two major enterprises in the city. And I just advise council to approve the appropriations. Now, you're discussing whether you like the firm you selected or not. That's a whole nother subject, and to me, it's totally separate, but appropriate for discussion. But we're talking about letting these departments who have to operate know whether they're going to have these funds or not. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to miss it from my experience in FY13 if you do not approve appropriations. And whether you like Zimmerman or not, you better have somebody who's there to be able to do these things. And, you know, based on what Mr. Reynolds said, I just want to remind council, I talk to y'all every month on the budget. In June, we reduced the budget by $1 million. Well, that's not because I wanted to. That's because the revenue projections that I made were $1 million less. And so we have an issue in this city about revenue. I think it's very important that you approve the appropriations that are in your enterprise departments, in your neighborhood services department. You have $50,000 in neighborhood services, and ESP, you have a total of $394,000, which I might remind you, if council has forgotten, they give $8 million to the general fund, plus overhead of probably another $1.2 million, $1.5 million, depending on what year it is. And if they do not have that revenue, they do not have that advertising, you're going to lose customers. That's fact, that's history. Council prior to this one, many years ago, did that because of whatever reason they decided, and it took about 5 to 10 years to get those customers back and get back on track. And, you know, once you get a hot water heater in and it's electric, it's going to last today 10, 20 years. You aren't going to get that customer back. The Port of Pensacola, $79,000. Airport, which is critical. You've already heard about the bond ratings with the airport and what's going on at the airport. You can be as positive as you want to. If you don't keep that in front of the traveling public, then you're going to lose, because we do have competitors. That's $475,000. Now, you have cut the $50,000 out of the mayor's budget, and you've cut $170,000 out of the MIS budget. But for the ones that are left, as your chief financial officer, I think it's critical for the operation of the city. And as far as whether you like Mr. Zimmerman and the Zimmerman agency or another agency, that's a discussion that can carry on. But let these departments know whether or not you can plan on having money in FY13, because it's just not going to happen overnight. I've been here too long. My experience tells me you've lost 13 if you delay on letting them know. And I would caution you on stopping the Zimmerman contract until you work through how long it's going to take another person to pick that up. And those are my comments. They're strictly revenue generating that are important. And I appreciate council listening to what I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. I want to, I want to share my appreciation for Chief Financial Officers, our city's Chief Financial Officer, Dick Barker's comments, and I want to say that was, for me, even a more compelling reason for us not to defund this. That was a very passionate delivery of some cold, hard facts from someone with a tremendous amount of experience. I believe Mr. Barker just gave all of us a dose of reality, and it's not often that I hear an accountant speak with such inflection and passion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barker, I will tell you that I appreciate all the comments you made, and as far as defunding the different departments and agencies like ESP and the airport, I think is right on point. I think that we can look at doing something that'll provide more continuity. The part that I disagree with you on is a lot of people look at the budget as just being dollars and cents. It's a political document. And some of the council members here, even though I may disagree with them on it, I was excited about what I saw from the Zimmerman Agency and the way they're able to leverage what they do for free media or earned media, as they called it. And I think we're not going to start seeing the results of it for 2 to 3 years. I don't think it's going to be an overnight renaissance. But as far as having the discussion on the Zimmerman Agency, whether to fund it, continue funding that contract or not to, I think is entirely appropriate for this discussion. The motion had been about the line item or about the contract itself, defunding it in all the places that it shows up in the budget there. And then people are just adding on to why they agree or disagree with that. I happen to disagree with it, and but I can see this, regardless of how this goes tonight, I can see this continuing for some time, and I welcome Council-elect Bear and Council-elect Kenner DeWin and Tahar. I think it's going to be the new generation coming in that's going to be part of that solution. And Ms. DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the comments of Mr. Barker. And I knew when I made this motion that the likelihood was that we had already made an adjustment to advertising in certain areas to send the message to the mayor and the decisions that were made. But we needed to have this conversation, and I'm proud of the debate that we've had, the issues that have been brought forward, also Councilman-elect Bear coming forward and sharing his concerns. We have spoken up for the citizens tonight, and this issue will continue to be discussed, and I think it puts the mayor on notice that we, as the legislative body, have policy concerns. We also have concerns about process. This is a rather large contract, but on every level. So I made the motion hoping we'd have this conversation and that there would be some support, and I feel that there is, but I do not want to, and I don't know if it's just because it's a budget, that I would be able to make a motion later on for portions of it to be defunded. So I will withdraw my motion at this point so we can move on and finalize our vote. Thank you.
Okay, Council, we have the main motion, and it's amended by Ms. Myers and Mr. Johnson. Ms. Myers is to move certain advertising dollars to other funds, and Mr. Johnson's is to move $120,000 from the mayor's budget to the police department for training purposes in their line item for training. And that, please vote. And that passes 7-1. Dr. Wu dissenting. So, okay. Madam Clerk.
Item number 3 is resolution number 41-12, a resolution to be entitled, A resolution adopting a final budget for the City of Pensacola Downtown Improvement Board for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2012, providing an effective date.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Deweese.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just wanted to again thank Mr. Kimbrough for coming on Monday and making himself available to answer the questions that had arisen during our initial budget hearing. I understand from further emails that he was not made aware of our first budget hearing and did not know he needed to be here. So I'm not sure where the gap in communication was on our side, on the city side, but all my concerns were addressed on Monday, and I did make a request for the documents that were shared, just so I understand the clarification in writing. But I wanted to thank him again for being here. I see him in the back there tonight, and I support your budget completely. Thank you.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I too wanted to thank Mr. Kimbrough for coming to the Committee of the Whole, and also I want him to know how proud I am of all of the work that he's done for the City of Pensacola. The great contributions you have made have been just really great, and I'm really saddened that you're leaving, but I just wanted to express that and let you know how much you've meant to this city.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I also wanted to thank Mr. Kimbrough for coming down, and I will be supporting this tonight. I also want to wish you the best of luck on your new endeavor. I mean that. Sometimes we've given you a hard time down here, but I hope you haven't taken it personally. It wasn't personal. So just want to wish you the best.
Dr. Wu.
I also want to wish Mr. Kimbrough much success in the future and thank him for all his contributions to Pensacola.
Hear, hear.
Okay. Do you have any words, Mr. Kimbrough? Okay. All right, I need to give the public an opportunity to weigh in on this item. Ms. Dubson?
I actually hadn't turned in my blue card because I wasn't certain that it was necessary, but, you know, when we were speaking earlier of the need to preserve residents in this city, I was trying to remember the exact statistics, and if my memory holds correct from the report that went out, I believe the downtown area has gained 1,100 residents during the time that the DIB has worked there. Belmont de Villiers has lost 2 during that time. And a lot of that is a direct response to the DIB and the work that they've done there. Yeah. And so when we start weighing priorities, I continue to ask this council to look at the little things that make a citizen want to stay in Pensacola. And it is not a glossy picture in a magazine. It is the trash being picked up, the safety that you feel, and the ability to engage with those who are making decisions and have them hear you clearly and act out. And the DIB may be a little cumbersome in its committee meetings from time to time, and some of the press likes to beat up about that, but I do go to every one of their early morning meetings, and they do allow every citizen to come in and give an idea and then try to act on it. And I think that is one of the wonderful things about living in Pensacola. And so I wholeheartedly support whatever you do with the DIB. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, please vote. And that passes unanimously. Because this is a special meeting for the purposes of adopting those 3 resolutions, we can bring no other business before us. Thank you for coming. Thank you, council. We're adjourned.